Boker Tov, everyone. Welcome back for another parsha for this week's parsha, and which is vaYigash, and he went over. We're going to continue this third section of the Joseph story, and in some ways, this is the moment of truth, and this is where things get resolved in this particular parsha. Uh, a lot, of course, happened since we last left off. The brothers wound up coming down a second time. Joseph having insisted that they bring Benjamin along with them so he could, quote, quote, lay his eyes on him. And then at the very end of last week's parsha, we read about how Joseph had his cup placed in Benjamin's sack, and then he accused them. He had his servant chase after them after they'd left Egypt. They, of course, discovered the cup in Benjamin's sack, and this now just really totally upset the apple cart. And Joseph at the very end says, well, he says, look, I could by rights imprison all of you, I could punish all of you, but I'm a just person. So only the person who committed the crime is going to be punished. I'm going to hold on to Benjamin, and the rest of you can leave, no problem. And as I explained, that these actions on Joseph's part might seem puzzling. In other words, the looming question would be, why didn't Joseph, the moment he saw his brothers, why didn't he simply reveal himself to them and let his father know that he was alive and everything would have been fine? Could have saved all this trouble. And the answer is that the Torah really wants to delve into this much more deeply. And what Joseph basically wants to find out is, to what degree do the brothers regret what they did? It's not something you forget quickly when your brothers sell you into slavery and certainly threaten to kill you. And so to try to resolve this, he realizes they may have some regret about it from their words and quite possibly from their behaviors. When he accuses them of spies, the reason for that is because they've been probably looking around Egypt to find out if Joseph's possibly there. So that accusation can stick. Incidentally, before I say another word, Baruch Atah Adonai, Melech Haolam, Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lasok b'divrei Torah. So to continue, why doesn't Joseph simply reveal himself to his brothers? So what Joseph is going to do is he so wisely and brilliantly sets up a situation where they can repeat what they did as easily as possible. So he's no stupid. He's no stupid, as they say. He realizes that probably Benjamin is now the favored brother, and that the whole family dynamic is simply continuing now with Benjamin. So he wants to set things up in such a way that the brothers have every excuse in the world for leaving Benjamin with him. In other words, getting rid of Benjamin in the family circle. And he wants to see, because if they really regret what they did, they're not going to let it happen again. They're not going to repeat it. And that's what he wants to see. And of course, the takeaway for us is that so often we will do something and we will regret it. And then exactly the same situation occurs, or even maybe it's an easier situation, and we go back and do exactly the same thing again. So the question is, what is that distance between regret and true tshuva? I know there are people who would never say they're sorry, ever. They wouldn't even say it. But the truth is, even saying you're sorry isn't enough if it isn't really followed up by a change of behavior. And so that is why Joseph is, why he cries, he loses his composure when he hears his brothers saying in front of him, this must be happening because of what we did to our one brother. And he can't control his emotions.
I I would like to ask if they had failed the test in some way, where would that put Joseph? Because he has to get back in touch with his father. He can't let his father keep thinking that he's dead. So
So,
I accept your explanation for his behavior. It makes perfect sense in light of what we read. But if he really doesn't know how the test is going to go, then what would he have done? What would he have done if they'd failed?
so I would have to give you my father's general answer to such a question, which is in Yiddish, "Oifamaisa fragmentish kein kashas." It's a story. What happens at this point is speculation and nothing more. You're absolutely right. It's a legitimate question. But the truth is, for the sake of the story, it has to work this way. And had the story wanted to be about the fact that his brothers had failed the test, the story would have had to be in a different story. But we don't know that. We can only speculate. And whatever speculations I'm doing right now have to fit perfectly all the little details of the story. And the truth is, the test is not failed. And the point about this is it also is it foreshadows Judah's preeminence amongst the tribes of Israel, because it is what Judah is going to do now that explains at least two things. One is that when all the tribes decide to split away from the house of David, of course, which is the house of Judah, Benjamin is the only tribe that remains loyal. And what happens now, what we're going to read about, explains why Benjamin, who is only a half brother of Judah, remains loyal to Judah, whereas everyone else, other than probably obviously a whole bunch of Levites, move on. They separate out. And also, okay, so that's two things that it explains: Judah's preeminence, the fact that Benjamin remains loyal to Judah, when all the other tribes leave. Another big takeaway is that the reason why the Torah teaches us this story, there's so many reasons, right? But at least the few that I can get out is it teaches us the nature of nobility. And true nobility is that you put everyone, everything else in front of yourself. That is leadership. That is nobility. And Judah learns this lesson because the last time we learned about Judah was that story with Tamar, where he shows a moment, okay, of potential nobility. And he also experiences the loss of his own children, two of his own children. And the reason for his behavior now that he explains to Joseph, which I think totally causes Joseph to lack any composure, is he says, how can he look at his father when he doesn't have Benjamin? And remember, he took personal responsibility. So his words had some, they, they had traction. It wasn't just a promise. It got him into trouble. And he says, when his soul, when my father's soul is bound up in the lad, the fact that Judah is willing to do what he is about to do is tells you what true nobility is about. And if we didn't read these kinds of things, I don't think we'd figure it out. Torah has to teach us these things.
At the same time, I feel like Yosef does not come off on this reading. Yosef comes off as with a certain arrogance, like, it's God's job is to test people, not man's. We're not meant to be. We're not here to test each other and put each other through paces or make each other jump through hoops. And it reminds me of the pasuk where I think Joseph is talking to the butcher, to the butler or the baker in the prison, and he said, "Answers come from God. Solutions of dreams come from God. Tell me."
And I
Siprun
think
Ali.
I understand. I'm not going to be, I appreciate what you're saying. I would say that put yourself in Joseph's place. And let me tell you something. I said this yesterday in my Dvar Torah. Today, there are leaders of countries who, if they were in a position to take revenge, would take revenge. Joseph does not take revenge. He was in a position the moment he saw his brothers to remember what they'd done to him, and guess what? Up with their heads. He was living in a country where he had that right. And I mentioned the fact that there's that story about that happened in North Korea, where this one soldier, they were listening to this long-winded speech of Kim Il-jung, whatever, okay? And he fell asleep, and he was executed for falling asleep. Executed for falling asleep. And Joseph executing his brothers for wanting to kill him and selling him into slavery? Can you compare those two circumstances? And the trouble is, there are people like Kim Il-jung alive today. And Joseph doesn't do that. He gives them a chance to redeem themselves. That's what he does. And look, again, if Joseph is in sync with the divine, with divine, at least as much as human beings can be, is in sync with God's will. And what it's saying also is, don't we have situations on an everyday basis where people do us wrong, okay? And we don't forgive them. We don't even give them a chance to forgive them. Somebody forgot to do something for us. And we're angry because we feel we got neglected or something, or we weren't sufficiently treated nicely. And we keep that, we harbor that in our hearts. And they'll say to us, listen, can't I run and go and do that, blah, 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 and make up for this? And we say, no, too late, bye-bye. You think of what the brothers did to Joseph and how Joseph chose to behave. And what it's saying is, you've got to give people a chance. And people are capable of redeeming themselves. This whole story is also a resolution to Cain killing Abel. And all those stories of fraternal competition and fraternal hatred, the human story, and here it gets resolved. At the end of Genesis, that conundrum is resolved. Listen, I'm telling you now why I love this story. I love this story. I think if you were asking me what were the 5 greatest pieces of literature that I've ever come across, this would be very close. If not the top, it would come close to the top. So, all right. Obviously, I totally appreciate the questions, Shirabeth. Thank you. Here we go. Okay, this is the previous parsha, the end of it. Um, no. Sorry. There's a little bit at the end of last parsha. We have Judah already appearing. Here we go. Sorry, I'm having such. So here's the map here. This is Judah talking to him. There's the end of the parsha right there. This parsha starts in the middle of the chapter, by the way, you notice. And that's because in the previous parsha, Judah has already he has already come forward to Joseph. And this is a continuation now. And I know you'll believe this. I find this so moving, unreal. You should go back, if you haven't read the beginning of this chapter, you should go back and read the previous 17 verses in English, if that's if that's where your comfort level is, and get the context of where we are now. vaYigash elav Yehuda. Judah went over to him. Vayomer, and he said, Be Adonai, please, my Lord, if you may, my Lord, if it please you, my Lord. Yidaber na'avdecha, let your servant speak, please. Davar, a word, be'oznei Adoni, in the ears of my Lord. Va'al yichar apcha, and may your anger not blaze ba'avdecha, against your servant. Look at how Judah is using language of complete submission to Joseph. He refers to himself in the third person. He refers to Joseph in the third person. It's this distancing, which is respect, absolute respect. I mean, he's talking to the person who is second in command in Egypt, right? I mean, I hear this phrase, speaking to power. Well, this is speaking to power. How can I say it? Um, it's exponentially. This is speaking to power exponentially. Because you are like a Pharaoh. You are as Pharaoh. Rashi. vaYigash elav. He's just introducing the parsha. Dvar be'oznei Adoni, a word in my Lord's ears. And the reason why he's saying it this way, Rashi says, Yikansu dvarai be'oznecha. May my words enter your ears. Ve'al yibchar apcha, and may your anger not blaze. So Rashi's takeaway is this. They say, Miklal hein shomin lav, umiklal lav shomin hein, which means from the positive, you can infer the negative, and from the negative, you can infer the positive, right? So for example, if I tell my grandson, clean your room, what can you infer? Cleaning his room is a positive thing. What is the inference of my telling him, clean your room?
His room's a mess.
Exactly. That's the negative.
Or worse, you're a bad person.
Maybe. The other thing is, so when God says to Abraham, fear not, Abraham, what can you infer from that?
It might be something to be afraid of.
Correct. He's afraid. You don't tell somebody to do something or not to do something if they are not doing it already or not doing it already. So if he's saying to him, do not be angry with me, what's the inference? Mikan, from this, ata lamed, you can infer, shediber elav kashot, that Judah was speaking words that could provoke Joseph. That he spoke to Joseph in a way that could provoke him. Ki kamocha kefaro, because you are like Pharaoh, hashuv ata be'enai kamelech. I consider you like a king. Pharaoh's a king, I consider you my king. And again, we don't, in these days when we don't have kings and queens so much anymore in political positions as much, we don't call them kings or queens necessarily. The thought of the degree of power that a king would have. Zehu pshuto, that's the simple plain meaning of this. Umidrasho, however, there's a midrash, socha lilkot alav. Okay, in the end, you're going to be punished regarding alav, regarding Benjamin, b'tzaraat, with leprosy. In other words, you're going to be like Pharaoh. That's another way of looking at the Hebrew. And what was the last Pharaoh before the Joseph story? When did we read about Pharaoh? We read about it when Abraham and Sarah had to go down to Egypt, and Pharaoh cast his eyes on Sarah, and he was smitten with leprosy. So he's referring now, implying that you, Joseph, because of course he doesn't know it's Joseph, right? He says, you're going to be like that Pharaoh. Gamor shilaka paro al yedei ziknati, just as Pharaoh was punished, was smitten by means of my grandmother, Sarah, al-laila achat, for one night, she'ikva, where he detained her. You're planning on detaining Benjamin. Imagine what's going to happen to you. And that's the implications of you are going to be like Pharaoh. Davar acher, another interpretation. Ma paro, gozer ve'eno makayem, just as Pharaoh issues edicts and does not fulfill them. Mavtiach ve'eno oseh, he makes promises and doesn't fulfill them. Af ata chen, you will be the same. And here's the point. Vechi zohi simat ayin sha'amarta. Is this what you're doing now? Is this a fulfillment of your words where you said that I may place my eyes? Remember, he says, you've got to bring down Benjamin so that I can see him. Implying I want to make sure he's actually alive. He's there, that you're telling me the truth. At least that's the way the brothers are going to understand it. She'amarta, which you said, lasum einecha alav, to place your eyes upon him. Davar echer, ki kamocha kefaro, just like you, so is Pharaoh. Im takniteni, if you provoke me, eherog otcha ve'et aronecha, I will kill you and your Lord, your master. It's interesting. What I'm struggling with on this is that the pshat, the open language that we are reading, doesn't put Judah in this place. But what I'm thinking is this: people can use very smooth words, and yet underneath it, there may be all kinds of other things going on. And I think life teaches us that. We try to learn, who can we trust? Whose words can we trust?
But
Because you can.
sorry, I was just going to say the Rashi
Mhm.
makes
Yeah,
it sound like under the surface, Yehuda is being very aggressive,
correct.
very
You have,
belligerent.
again,
But
let's,
but we really don't have a reason to believe that he was in any position to back up that aggression.
yes, yes, true, true. We don't know for sure. We know these people are pretty powerful. That again, I mean, we have to, in a sense, go on trust with that. I'm what what concerns me more is simply even the implications of these statements. Even if Judah would fail, the fact that he's threatening Joseph. And the truth is this: had that soldier spoken to Kim Il-jung these kind of words, what do you think would have happened to him?
Like in the Rashi, you mean? The Rashi kind of words?
Yeah, well, these words that we're seeing in the pshat of our text.
Oh, in the Pshat?
Yeah,
If,
and well, I'm saying that the even had he spoken to him in the meekest of ways, he was planning on killing him regardless. He would have killed him. He would have. Okay, I've been in situations myself where I've wanted to politely talk to someone, and when they are angry with me, and even when they don't seem to be angry with me, hasn't happened all that often, and they've said to me, "Don't talk to me about it." Even as politely as you may want to speak. I don't want to hear it. And there are people who are, and look, is Joseph appearing to the brothers in a good mood? No. I mean, it's true he's framed them, but at least as far as they can tell, he has every right to be mad. I mean, it could have been someone in his court who had framed them. It wasn't they wouldn't necessarily think it was Joseph. And Joseph's words to them and saying, okay, I'm going to sort of control my anger. And even though I have every right to keep all of you, I'm just keeping Benjamin. And don't ask me anything more from that. I've already extended myself to the max. And here's Judah coming, and he's confronting him. As politely as it is, it's still a confrontation. And I think this story is so true to people's emotions and how they act emotionally. And we don't have to go that far in the United States to see this kind of behavior. Okay. Do you want me to stop here? Do you want me to push on a little bit? Almost
We have
time.
we have 5 more minutes on my watch. I don't
Yeah, right. Me too. Okay, let me see if I can get this down a little bit. There we go. Let's go on. So I won't be able to get into the Rashi now, I don't think. Adoni Sha'al, my Lord asked, et avadav, he requested of his servants, saying, Hayesh lachem av o ach, do you have a father or a brother? So I guess it is short enough. Let's see. Rashi. Adoni Sha'al et avadav. My Lord asked his servants. Mitchila ba'alila bata alenu. The implication, look, is saying, you said this. Judah is saying, he's using polite language, but he is saying to Joseph, you told us, you got us into this mess. Don't people love being told they're responsible for the problems? Okay. Mitchila ba'alila bata alenu. From the very beginning, you came with a pretext. In other words, you were trying to get us into this. Lama haya lacha lishol kol ela. For what reason were you asking us these questions? Okay. Sorry. Yeah, kol ela. Bidcha hayunu mevakshim. Were we seeking your daughter? You know, you ask those kind of questions in that sort of circumstance. Somebody wants to come and marry your daughter. Well, then you can ask them these questions about their family. You want to know their family background. We didn't come and ask, we weren't coming to court your daughter. Or achotenu atam vakesh. Were you planning on marrying our sister? And nevertheless, the ne'emar el Adonenu, we said to El Adoni, we said to our Lord, Lo hichadnu mimcha davar. We didn't hold back anything from you. We were very open. You had no right to ask us these questions under the circumstances. We're coming to buy grain. When you go to the grocer, does he ask you if your father's alive or if you have a brother or a sister or somebody like that? Is that a question that you ask when you're going into a business transaction?
No.
This kind of business transaction? What business did you have to ask us those questions? And again, who's speaking to who? Think of that situation. Vanomar el Adoni, and we said to my Lord, Yesh lanu av zaken, we have an elderly father, Velieled zukunim katan, and a child of his old age. Va'achiv mate, but our brother is deceased. Vayivater hu levado le'imo, and he alone remains as his mother's, to his mother. Va'aviv ahevo, and his father adores him. He's the only one left to his mother. Va'achiv met, and his brother is dead. Mipnei hayira haya motzi davar sheker mipiv. It was on account of his fear, that is Judah's fear, that he uttered a lie, that a lie came from his mouth. Amar, he thought, Im omar lo shehu kayam, if I say to him that he still exists, Yomar havi uhu etzli, he may say, bring him to me. Levador le'imo, alone to his mother, me'otor ha'em, from that mother, ein lo od ach, he does not have another brother, blood brother, on both sides. So this is it for today. as you can see, this is the denouement, as they call it, of the story. Stop the share, and I hope we'll have those who join us tomorrow. Farewell. Those who are on the recording, take care.